in my veins. Blue in one eye, red, white, and blue in my brain. I'm Bulldog born. Bulldog, that's my breed. I was born to follow where the Bulldogs lead.
Ladies and gentlemen, he delighted the crowds right through the 1980s with pure razzle-dazzle. We're talking none other than the greatest Bulldog player in our history. It's Dancing W. Hawkins.
On you, Matty. Good to be on board, Matty. Fantastic to be on board, Matty. Now, Matty, who are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's a man who has pedigree linking right back to the 1800s with his family who are associated with the club. And he's now actually the past players president. You know who this is. It's Ross Abbey.
Roscoe, the great Roscoe. Gee whiz. I reckon, Matty, they go back a long time, the Abbey names, the Bulldogs. Now, let me get this right. Angus was his father.
Right.
I reckon Angus played in the 54 winning Premiership. He started on the bench with Arthur Edwards, the father of Butchie, Alan Edwards. Is that right?
You know your stuff, Dougie. Yes.
Yeah, I know, mate. That's what you do, mate. You do make your history of, and I know that off the top of my head. I didn't need to go to any computer or any razzmatazz stuff. I knew that. I knew that. So let's talk about Roscoe. Played Victoria?
Played for Victoria in 1975.
75. Did he win a best and fairest, Matty?
He didn't win a best and fairest, but he played for 11 seasons and it was 123 games. Kicked 65 goals as well. So he could toggle from the half back line, played on ball as well. So he had a fair bit of flexibility.
Bit of an all-rounder, Matty, wasn't he, Roscoe? I started with 78. I had that first year with Roscoe. Obviously, wore number 30. I knew that very, very well. He used to run at training. I used to call him a tugboat. He used to sound like a tugboat when he ran. I said, it sounds like a tugboat, this bloke, Ross Abbey. We're totally different in personalities, me and Roscoe, but we get along very, 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 very well. And he was a real clean football player with his ability with his balance. Obviously a right footer, could go left if he had to. Matty played off half back. As you said, then he's gone forward and kicked goals. I reckon he might have even tagged on ball, some good players on ball in his real good years that he played. But Matty, just a really, you know what he's, Matty? If he was bleeding, it'd be red, white, and blue. It wouldn't be red blood, mate. This bloke Ross Abbey, he's a bulldog. He loves the Bulldogs. He's a passionate bulldog, and he was a terrific player in his own right, Matty. To play at 10 or 11 years at that level. You're not a mug, are you? There's no doubt about that. So, for me, I got along with Roscoe really well. Again, it's a very, very well-balanced player. And now he's done a fantastic job with the past players. He's formed that together now really good. He keeps us all informed, us past players, of what's going on and where things are going and where it's out. So he just loves the footy club, Matty. He just loves the footy. As I said, state player. Yeah, 75, you had the Dempseys and these type of blokes running around. And Roscoe Abbey played for Victoria. So, mate, all I can say is that I had probably 4 or 5 years, probably 3 or 4 years with Roscoe. But I'll never forget that when I first... when you get him on, Matty, you ask him about that tugboat.
I was going to say that, absolutely. And am I right? Did you guys play together in that 1978 game that was our record score where Templeton kicked 15? Were you both in that?
Yeah, I reckon Roscoe played in it.
Right.
I certainly played in it, Matty. Geez, it was interesting, Matty. I kicked 3 goals in the first quarter.
Oh.
I kicked 3. I was only the first year, and I kicked 3 goals. And then a bloke called Phil Stevens, who played at Geelong, was at St Kilda, blonde-headed bloke, come out and tagged me and cut me out of the game a bit. I was still involved in a fair few goals because we kicked 33 of them. So I was involved in some of them. And as you said, Calvin, I think Calvin kicked 7 or 8 in that last quarter, but Roscoe was certainly involved in that game. And I remember the great Ronnie Simmons, our runner, for about 20 years. The father of Larry. He was a great mate of mine and played at the Bulldogs. And he became a runner, Larry, with Terry Wheeler in later years. And I remember Ronnie Simmons coming out to Ian Dunstan that day and he said, "Hey, Mocker, kick the ball to Calvin. He's going to break the record." And Mocker said, "Don't worry about him, mate. I've kicked 7. I'm going to break the record." Mocker Dunstan, who's I think a 2 or 3-time Premiership, 2 or 3-time best and fairest winner. He said, "No, don't worry about KT. I've kicked 7. I'm going to break the record." So it was an interesting day, that one, Matty, and Roscoe was a big part of that. I reckon they kicked 15 or 16 goals, St Kilda. Yeah. And I remember at the end of the game, they ran off the ground, and I think we were about to go off, but the siren hadn't gone. And even Don McKenzie, our coach, was on the ground. And I remember Trevor Barker coming past me saying, "What have I done wrong? Oh, I've got to play on Templeton now." He kicked about 4 on Trevor Barker, the late Trevor Barker. Was a terrific player, but a lot smaller than Calvin. But I must admit, Matty, he got a few marks in that game, Calvin, which was very, very lucky to get. But no, Roscoe certainly played in that one, Matty, and was a very good player in that one. But gee whiz, to play in that, mate, it was something special. It really was.
Yeah.
33 goals, mate. It was. I think Fitzroy came along and broke it at one stage, and that like a couple of years later on. But Roscoe's a big part of that. And again, Matty, he's a great clubman. He's a great bloke. He's well loved by the past players, and all supporters loved number 30 on his back. His name was Ross Abbey. He's a star.
Oh, so good. Well, we can't wait to bring him in because I can hear the doorbell. No, he's knocking. He is knocking. Bring him in.
Good on you, Roscoe. Love you, mate.
Thanks, Abbey.
Good on you, Matty.
He's a son of a gun who played 123 games for the Bulldogs. He kicked 65 goals, represented the Big V, and he's a life member. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Ross Abbey.
Hello. I'm embarrassed by that.
I love to big up our guest, Ross. And you know what? We're delighted to have you on board today because, you know, you come back from incredible Bulldog heritage and we can't wait to explore that today. We ask all our players, how would you describe yourself as a player in your own words?
Yes, I was a long drop punt. Had a good spring, took some nice marks to a couple of hangers, so that was fun. And that's right. The typical adjective that was used was dashing, so I'll take that.
Right.
And I suppose if you say, well, who were you like recently? I read on one of those blog things that someone likened me to Rowan Smith. Now, Rowan Smith was a champion. No, that wasn't anywhere near his street, but that sort of player, if you like, but except half, maybe 40% of what Rowan was.
Very humble, but as a dashing sort of half back with a long kick, that's they're the attributes, aren't they?
And look, if I'm going to pump myself up, I might as well mention that I kicked 65 goals. So that was, and I did play for a season or so on the ball, but 65 goals. A bunch of my defender cohort, had single finger. Oh no, I shouldn't say that, but they didn't have a lot of goals. But if I had a chance, go for it.
Awesome, love that, love it.
And I predominantly played halfback for the first few seasons. The first thing was you needed to beat your opponent, and you would often generally play on one player for a full game. Right. So beat your player and then use the ball to advantage. So I'd run off and my aim was to kick the ball in front of Kelvin Templeton when Kelvin emerged, or Laurie Sandlads before that, or Greg Parker, who had a brilliant season or two with us, and he was fabulous to play with because he'd always present really well. You just had to drop it out in front. Kelvin, you just had to drop it out in front of him. He'd get it every time. They're running this way. Everyone's expecting him to kick it straight at him. Just kick it out there. You take the mark and kick the goal. It's easy.
So you've got red, white, and blue pumping through your veins, haven't you? And am I right in saying that your family goes back to the 1800s with your association?
Yes, right. Well, yes, most people know that I'm the son of a Premiership player, Angus, who played the 1954 Premiership side, and also played in that golden era which culminated in the Premiership win. He played in the first winning final for the Bulldogs and played in the 51 finals, the 53 finals, and then ultimately the 54 finals. And just an aside, he retired after the 1953 finals, and Charlie Sutton suggested that he might continue to keep fit because they might need him later in the year. So he did that, but he kept going on, getting a bit fit, and mid-season he played from about round 11 onwards, and then ultimately played in the Premiership side and was the best clubman that season. He was a footballer who started as a 21-year-old with the Waratahs in the Footscray District League. So that was his first season. His second season was with the Bulldogs reserve side. And then in his third season, he played in the seniors and then played in that fantastic era. So his success was certainly the inspiration that a 10-year-old, for a 10-year-old to say, I want to play league footy. My granddad, Len Johnson, my mum's dad, played in the 1920 Premiership side for Footscray. They were, the fantastic VFA side. And of course, they, in 1924, won the VFA, and there was the champions of the state, and they knocked off Essendon, who won the VFL, and that's how come we were admitted into the league. Yeah, we had also Grundens in the era before Grandad. He was a champion of the state, and and when Dad arrived, okay, he got the letter, as 100 kids did, come out and try out. He turned up at Western Oval, and there's 100 kids, as you can imagine, and he was heading out the door. What am I doing here? I'm not good enough. What am I doing here? And his uncle, Norm Woodman, who played in 1928, 29, 30, and actually captained the side for 5 games, grabbed him by the shoulder and said, back in there. And to Dad's surprise, they had a list that went on the wall on every Thursday, and that you have to look to see if your name was on the list. And he'd come every Thursday and he'd be surprised because his name was on the list. So that continued, and eventually he was on the list. So he's obviously very quick, and he played must have played a brilliant finals game in 1953. All of the papers bar one had him best on the ground, and he played against Billy Hutchison, who had the Essendon champion, who'd just been given the Brownlow medal. It was a standout. And he used to play against Bob Davis and those sort of guys. So
Wow.
As a halfback flanker in a side that had some really, really good defenders. Yeah.
Wow, it's incredible. So through your career, was your dad in your ear? Was he, a source of advice and guidance?
Yeah, my parents were definitely. My dad was, you'd have to really sort of pester him to get information. He was the opposite to a pushy father, for sure. And my advice to any fathers who reckon their kids can play is just go away. So he wasn't pushy at all. But he certainly gave good advice and stuff like that. And I'd sort of want a critique of the game, and again, I'd be pestering and stuff like that, because you sort of look at, it's silly looking back at it now, but you'd look at, what did I do wrong and stuff like that. Don't worry about that. I kicked 4 goals, I sort of probably focused on the wrong thing, but anyway.
We all do that.
And Mum was really supportive. She was, so I had a skills coach, and I had a psychologist coach. So that was pretty good. And then John Burt thrown in. So that was all, I had 3 great mentors, and certainly it wouldn't have happened if any one of those 3 hadn't been involved, I don't think.
It's incredible. So I imagine as a young child, you must have just been inspired or ordained to say, you know what, I want to be a Bulldog player myself. Was that a dream as a child of yours?
Definitely, as a 10-year-old, definitely, or less, younger. I mean, Definitely, no doubt, no doubt.
Oh, I love hearing that. And who are your idols, sort of as a Bulldog supporter as a kid as well? Who'd you look up to and love?
Well, certainly David Darcy for sure. Um, John Gillard for his ridiculous courage running back with the fly of the ball. That was crazy. Um, yeah, we used to go to most of the games, but of course, obviously Ted played and John Schultz played.
Amazing players to sort of look up to. And did
Yeah,
you, so take us to Strathmore. You played your junior footy career there. How did you climb through the ranks? And did it become apparent that maybe your dream to become a VFL star might be a possibility?
oh, well, I always felt that it was. And I played 7 seasons as a junior at Strathmore, fabulous family club. My last game for Strathmore, we won the 1970 under-17s grand final, which was fantastic to have done that. And they were just great. And they were really, really supportive. Like I was committed to my school, Wesley College. So I played for the school, and some days, some weekends, I'd play for both the school and Strathmore. And a few times when the timing allowed, I'd play for one and then the other in the same day.
Wow.
Which so it was had a pretty crowded year. In fact, the start of that year, Essendon invited me to train with them, and I did do that. And when Jack Clark was coaching, and on a few occasions during the school holidays, I was able to train at Essendon, get the bus from Moonee Ponds when I was 17, and then train at Footscray Park, which is where the pre-season training was happening. But in a letter to mum and dad who were overseas, I said, I don't know that I can keep this up much longer. But I certainly made the right decision. I could have, I was obviously invited to play for Essendon, but the family history was such that there wasn't much chance of me going there. Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. No, I don't imagine that mum or dad or your grandparents would have been best pleased had you have made a selection to go to the Bombers.
Probably not. I know. Actually, I think they would have been really supportive, but
Sure.
no, probably not.
Yeah. So I'll just take you back one step back to your Wesley College days. I understand you had a really grueling but unorthodox training regime, and can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, okay. I don't know who you've been talking to there. Well, actually, I don't think I know. But yeah, I sort of felt that, I really trained. I did train well, and I was very determined. And I thought I might run to school. Now, school was 15 kilometres away. But the big trick was that none of my mates would take my school bag. So I had to work it all out. But there was always some textbooks that I had to take. So I'd run from Strathmore, run down Mount Alexander Road, down Swanston Street. And I made a practice because Swanston Street was pretty busy as it is now. And I balked the people. So they must have thought I was an absolute idiot.
I've got visions of you running down Swanston Street, selling candy, balking and spinning and sidestepping. Oh, hopefully there's some footage out there somewhere.
Yeah, well, I ended up being pretty good at the balk and the blind turn.
So here we are. You're an 18-year-old. You're going down to the Kennel, the home that your dad made his home for so many years. What was it like walking through the doors? Were you stressed and nervous to sort of live up to that family reputation? And what was it like to sort of see Big Teddy Whitten at the helm?
Well, it wasn't so dramatic as that, because at the end of the school year, I'd played 4 thirds games and 1 seconds game. So I'd actually been training. Well, I was training with Wesley and Strathmore, and I was training at the Bulldogs as well. So there wasn't sort of a moment where I came in, because I've sort of gradually been doing that. But certainly playing my first game. So round 2, just turned 18, and I'm playing with David Darcy. Now, for the previous 3 or 4 years, there was a photo of David Darcy on the wall as the brilliant player that he was. And he had trained over in Adelaide and then transferred back to Victoria and was playing, it was round 2. So he was playing. So he's my idol, and you're walking out there and just sort of surreal, just amazing. Yeah.
when you arrived at the club, Teddy was there. What was your involvement with Ted and some of your memories of his big personality?
Well, he coached the first season that I played there. And when I played my first 2 games, I was just overawed, no doubt. So you don't sort of think about what the coach is doing. You're sort of worried about what you're doing yourself. So I don't have, I mean, he was a larger than life figure, but, I was 18 and just keeping quiet in the corner. So, yeah.
Oh, amazing, amazing.
Yeah, and so I had a couple of games early on, and being the son of a Premiership player, it comes with a little bit of it's a good thing to start with, but pretty soon you sort of have to get some kicks, and so it opens the door. But yeah, I guess after 3 seasons, it hadn't all happened, and I was pretty frustrated. I played 8 senior games, and sort of thought, well, this wasn't how it was supposed to be. I came down and I played game 2, played round 8, and should have just taken off and just no hassle. But the frustration of those 3 years was really the foundation of what happened later. It really was, and that was further helped by the fact that our coach was John Burt, the champion Essendon Rover, and he was just fantastic. And a bunch of my contemporaries, speak very highly of John, and he was at our recruits dinner recently, and just great. But I used to train. He used to live around the corner, so we'd go for runs up at Strathmore Heights and stuff like that in the off season. It just run and run and run. He was super fit as a coach, an older person, I suppose. But yeah.
Right. So this is 1971 to 1973. So I understand you played around 60 games in the reserves at that stage.
Yes.
Really get us your apprenticeship, essentially.
Yes.
And he was the reserves coach, you're saying?
Yes.
Right.
We played finals too. We had a couple of times we played a bunch of finals games, and they were really good footy. Seconds footy used to be pretty disjointed. You'd have disgruntled senior players coming back. You'd have junior kids from the country. You'd have people in the middle. But finals footy was different. It was a team game, and it was the next best thing to league footy. So there were some pretty good games in that group. Yeah.
Right. And while you were doing this, were you sort of itching to get into the seniors? Were you feeling, do you know what, I'm ready to come in? Was there a sense of frustration, or were you sort of aware that actually I'm building towards something big and just be patient?
No, it was the former, definitely. And I was pretty frustrated. And the radio copped it a few times. You used to listen to 3DB and you get the teams at 10 o'clock or whatever it was. And there was a couple of times the radio hit the floor. So you just sort of think, you felt that you should have been in there, and possibly I should have been, but as it turned out, it was the best thing. Yeah, because when I got in, I stayed in. Yeah.
Right. So that brings us to the 1974 season. In round 2, I understand you got your opportunity and you held on to it. That's for sure. You had a big assignment, didn't you?
Yes,
and it was the great Malcolm Blight. Can you talk us through a little bit about that explosion?
Yes. Well, Malcolm Blight was the boom recruit. For some reason, there was a hold-up and he didn't debut until round 2. So I played on Malcolm round 2. And I played on Malcolm a lot in subsequent times. But that was the turnaround game, no doubt. So that went pretty well. And then the next half a dozen games went pretty well. And then you gain some confidence, and then you start doing things, and they come off, and you gain a bit more confidence, and it flows from there. So from that point, I had 3 seasons where I didn't miss a game, 66 games consecutively. So that was great, because you really you could play with a bit of flair and know that if you made a mistake, well, it wasn't the end of the world necessarily. Well, you try not to do that.
Sure. So thinking about Malcolm Blight, I would have thought that he wasn't a perfect match for you just in terms of size. Were you an incredibly versatile player? How did you come to match up with someone like Blight?
Well, actually, that's interesting to say that. I would think that I think I did match up pretty well with him. Like he was one to take a specky from anywhere, and occasionally he stood on my head. But there's different tactics to play on players like Malcolm and David Mackay, who was arguably the best mark in a couple of those seasons, and I regularly played on him as a changing half forward, which is pretty amazing given his height. But no, I enjoyed that. And you're always in the play, like sometimes there were kids that had come through, and you'd beat that kid, but you wouldn't be in the play. He only got 2 kicks, but that was the first half of the job. But because you weren't in the play, you weren't influencing the play much. So I'd much prefer to play on Malcolm Blight, even if he, sometimes made you look silly. And the better the player, I played on Peter Knights and stuff like that, and it was great playing on those guys. Yeah.
Well, they attract the ball, don't they? And
Yeah.
that's what you want the action. So
Yeah.
incredible. Just on that, who, if you could distill it down to some of your best opponents of all time, who's the greatest players that you played on, and how did you go against them?
Well, I think those two would be in a small group. I played against John Hendry at school and when he played at Hawthorn. I guess you weren't sort of necessarily lined up on them and Michael Tuck was ruck raving. David McMahon was a very difficult player because you might keep him to 8 kicks or something, and he kicked 4 goals. Well, you sort of think, oh, that's not fair. So I found that was a bit awkward. But who else? Well, I played on Jeff Southby once too.
Oh wow!
So I had in a couple of weeks I played on Knights, and then a couple of weeks later I played on Southby. So very interesting. Yeah.
Amazing. So what's the strategy on playing someone like Knights? Someone with this incredible leap. How do you quell him?
Well, I was playing centre half forward, and he was in Brownlow medal contention. He didn't get 3 votes from that day, so it was. I think he just got to lead and lead and lead. It's no good sitting under the ball. He's going to mark it each time. So, yeah, a fantastic player.
Oh, yeah. Amazing. Well, look, 1974, you had a fantastic season as an individual, as was sort of just touched on there, but it also mirrored the success of the team. It was the first season since 1961, 13 years in the waiting before we finally made finals again. So there must have been incredible excitement in the air. Can you recall any of the sort of the highlights from that campaign, or any memories that come back to you?
Yes, what you say is correct. We were on fire. The first 10 weeks we were just really exciting. Bernie Quinlan and Peter Welsh were a twin forwards, if you like, and they were kicking goals for fun. It was just fantastic. So we really had a fabulous list, and we played really, really well. We got to Queen's birthday. We hosted Richmond, the reigning premiers. That match was attended by the largest crowd for a home and away home game that the Bulldogs have ever played in, up to round 2 this year. Yeah, it was a big day, and we played pretty well. And halfway through the third quarter, there was a game-changing moment where Laurie Sandilands was just about to put through a goal, and Merv came from the clouds and smothered it, and it went straight down the other end, and they kicked a goal. And then they kicked another goal. And then they won by about 3 goals. But yes, fantastic. Now that the subsequent 4 weeks, we dropped games to lowly sides, 3 lowly sides. And the last game we played Richmond at Western Oval, and we beat them on a wet day. And so we're in the finals, and we were playing Collingwood.
Well, Laurie Sandilands tells us that because we hadn't played finals for so long, there wasn't much of a template of how to prepare. And he said the club made the decision to go down for a camp down at Phillip Island. So I think you can tell us a bit about that.
Correct. Okay, so we're playing Richmond, and we've beaten them. So we've beaten the reigning premiers. And we jump in our cars and we drive down to Phillip Island. So we're straight from the ground, have a shower, goes down to Phillip Island. So this is the pre-finals camp. So some bright spark thought, oh, we'll put on a few beers, and then we might as well put on a few more beers, and then a few more beers. So the pre-finals camp ended up looking like a end-of-season trip with people sleeping under the table, and it's just terrible and just awful to think back that what an opportunity we had and how it was blown apart then. And the following day, some of the guys went out and fishing, and they were their stomachs were upset the rolling of the waves. So it's just appalling to think you would prepare for a final in that way, but that's what happened, and we missed out.
Wow.
We played Collingwood, and it was a big occasion, but they rolled us. Yeah. You look at that squad, and like in the standing, we had not in order, but Dempsey, Quinlan, Round, Peter Welsh, who won the best and fairest a couple of years before that, Calvin Templeton. There's 5 people in a row, and then there's Ian Salmon, there's Laurie Sandilands, and now. Calvin was emerging, and young Ted Whitten was emerging, Jeff Jennings was emerging, Terry Wheeler was emerging. So you can't really say, well, they were going to play a lot of games. They were just juniors, but notwithstanding that, we had a fabulous list, and we just we didn't. That was the time for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, well, coming out seasick for your first final in 13 years is not an ideal preparation, and the baby Bulldogs would be back. We know that, but was there a review of any sort? Like, did any of the senior boys sit down and say, you know what, we need to really change that up? That wasn't good.
I don't know about that. I often wonder what on earth were they thinking? But it's history now. Yeah.
Yep. Well, look, we had retribution on our minds, didn't we, in 1975? That's for sure. There was a lot of optimism. We recruited well. And you were entering the peak of your powers as well. How was the feeling of hope moving into that season? Did you think, we can turn this around with that list we've got?
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of an assumption that you just carry on.
Right.
I think that was, so, and clearly that everyone starts without any wins. And I think there was a confidence that we were finished 5th, and we would just go into the finals and do better than that. Certainly, we recruited well. We had still had a really good list. Those people that I just mentioned, and then Featherby, Neil Sachse will come to that, no doubt, and we'll come to Neil, no doubt. And there was a couple of others. So really, some really handy recruits. Peter Featherby's a champion. Yeah, so we were really confident and primed for that. Round 2, I guess the biggest tragedy. Neil Sachse collided with Kevin O'Keefe. There was an accident, and he was left as a quadriplegic. So that was just absolutely devastating. And a bunch of the guys got to know Neil. He'd only come over, say, after Christmas, so we didn't know him very well. I was fortunate. I got to know him quite well afterwards. I'd go to Adelaide once a year, and we'd go and have coffee or breakfast, and he was just a remarkable person. I never heard him say, "Why was it me?" or anything like that. I never heard him say, "Woe is me, why was it me?" There were 20 blokes on the field and 19 walked off. Now I felt that for sure, but he never said that, and he just devoted himself to trying to raise funds for spinal cord research. And just a wonderful person to know, just a wonderful mate. So it knocked the stuffing out of the place, and we probably ended up, we missed the finals, and I guess you would have thought, that was an opportunity. 74, 75, 76, we were contending, and you'd say that probably that would have been in the middle of it, but that was just so devastating. And we'd also had, Matt, I don't know if you're aware, but in the previous years we had Robert Rose, quadriplegic because of a car accident. Stephen Boyle lost his eye in a a match against St Kilda, which is just terrible. That was 1972. So in 4 years, we had 3 situations like that. It's just terrible.
Wow, that's unbelievable. And
Yeah.
and I'm told that in the early days after the accident, players adopted a let's do it for Neil approach, and it resulted in you boys being up. But I guess not dealing with the trauma of that, there's going to be a point where that comes to really affect the playing group, and things started to sort of go downhill from a performance perspective. Was that just incredibly hard for you guys to take as a collective?
I can't remember whether it was talked about much as a collective.
Yep.
It certainly has been subsequently.
Yeah.
And we, it certainly affected some of the people really badly. And, well, I can't say any more than that. So, but it's, we have spoken about it since, and, it did, so it was a tragedy. It's, these 2 little kids, and, his, Janine was fabulous. She was obviously a fantastic support, and big challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can see the emotion in you as well, Ross, and I know you're a great mate. So thank you for sharing that story. From a personal perspective, that year you went on to play for the Big V.
Yes, I did. I was selected in the Western Australian game, and I was the emergency. I played against South Australia at Football Park, and certainly the biggest individual thrill of my career, being selected. So it was a wet football park, as you can imagine. There weren't very many Victorians there, so it was a pretty new stadium as well, and it's pretty wet. Victoria, we got off to a pretty good start and had a bit of a lead, low-scoring game, and then the South Australians started coming back, and they kicked a couple of goals in a row, and then kicked another one in a row, and the stands roared, and there was a lot of noise and emotion and stuff like that. And I came on at that moment and kicked 2 goals, and you couldn't hear a pin drop. And like the sound before I went on, I can feel the hairs in the back of my neck now, because it was just so loud. But yeah, I kicked the goal, 2 goals, went up, bang bang, and nothing, no sound at all. So we won, and so I've got a cutting here that says Inside Football. You're probably too young. The Inside Football was a Sunday paper that said Abbey rides Vic's home. so that was fantastic. It was great, and just I've got the team over my left hand side there, and you got Peter Knights, Jeff Southby, Peter Bedford, Gary Dempsey, and on and on and on and on. You think, oh, there's me. So how do we get there? Gary Hardiman, just terrific player. Lee Matthews, Jezelenko was captain. Yeah, so Max Richardson, I say Southby. Brian Nankervis, Bruce Nankervis. He's a nice guy. Yeah, Bruce Nankervis.
Wow. So what was it like playing with them, training with them as well, and then playing with them?
Fantastic.
Magic.
The ball didn't hit the ground.
Oh.
Yeah. No, it was amazing. You still think, what am I doing here? No, it was fantastic.
Well, you pinch yourself. You kicked 2 goals in a
Absolutely.
winning side for the Big V. That's what an achievement.
It certainly turned the game, and that's not. But it was just the timing. So it was beaut timing. Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, what an individual achievement that is. You played 66 consecutive games at this time. What was the secret to your resilience and your consistency?
Oh, I don't know. Well, I used to train really well, and I do sort of what they used to call circuits at home as well. So I kept myself pretty fit, and did stretching and stuff like that. So I was pretty full on with all that stuff. Yeah, but that came to an end when we played the last game in 1976. We had to beat Carlton to play in the finals, and time on, 4th quarter, it's pretty close, and then Carlton player ran across my grounded leg and smashed it. So there's about 2 minutes to go and I'm hobbling off the ground.
Oh.
So we drew that game, and that meant that we played finals. We played Geelong the following week, and I think we lost by 10 points, the last goal going through right at the end. So there was nip and tuck and you sort of think, if only. But, that's that.
And look, you kicked 65 goals in your career, you say.
I did.
That's awesome. So you must have spent some time on ball, right? You went into
Yeah.
How
I
was
did.
that?
I suppose from 70, halfway through 75. I played a bit on the ball, and So I kicked 4 one day, and that Fitzroy game I kicked 3, and the last kick I hit the base of the post. So anyway, again, it's a long time ago. Who's to say I'm not? Who can counteract that or say that didn't happen? But anyway, got a few goals. Yeah.
Nice. Is there one that sticks in your head, a goal that that pops into your mind at different times and that you remember really fondly?
Well, there are a few good ones, but certainly one of the ones in that game, and I balked a couple of was it 2 or 3, and got the ball in the square, balked a couple of Fitzroy players, and then kicked it straight through. So that was in the final half a dozen for the goal of the year.
Awesome. The Swanson Street Dodge has come back.
That's right. That's exactly right. And also, Princess Park, you dodged every tree in Princess Park. So, that was probably the most satisfying. Yeah.
Brilliant. Love it.
Look, I was really fortunate across the whole journey to have a lot of continuity. I didn't miss many games. But then I missed most of 1977. The operation sort of was postponed. Like they thought they could, that putting it in plaster for 6 weeks would stabilise it, but that didn't work. So I had an operation at the end of January. So, getting going after that wasn't terribly practical, and I played a few games.
Yeah, right. So 7 games in 1977, but
was it? Oh, okay. I didn't think it was that many.
Right. Yeah. But you were back on track, and 78 was just one of those amazing years, wasn't it? Because it had these incredible highs, but also some lows that punctuated that. Can you walk us through some of those ups and downs?
Yes, it did. Well, I suppose too, the background, there was turmoil in the background, and that started in 1975. So there was a lot of disharmony with the committee and stuff like that. Supporters groups, social clubs, and social club war with the footy club, and social club being closed, and all this sort of thing. So there was and during my 11 seasons, I think we had 10 CEOs or an equivalent name, like general manager. They changed the name a few times, but it was, the key person. There was 10 in 11 years, and that was pretty sort of indicative of what was going on. And then later on, at 78, the senior coach resigned after round 2, or was it before round 2? Anyway, around then, because he didn't like the fact that some of his star players were being sold without him being told in advance. We're talking Bernie Quinlan, like no one, like a superstar. But then there were Dennis Collins and a couple of others. So Bill Goggin took that, didn't take that well, and he resigned. So that was a bit of turmoil then. Yeah. And then, so that was all happening. And the players shouldn't be involved in club politics, but you had to, because your teammates were being sold and to pay the bills and this sort of thing. So we had meetings with the board, and so we were stuff like that, and had Channel 9 cameras with sticking in your face when you come out from the training and after the meeting, rather. And I was right in the middle of all that. So anyway, that's what it was. So that was disappointing for sure. '78's highlight, well, there was one particular game which I'm sure everyone knows about, and that was the game that Kelvin turned it on. And we turned it on. St Kilda had given us a hiding the year before. George Young had gone to town. He kicked 9. So Kelvin, he fixed all that. So he kicked 15-9. So he had 24 scoring shots. and Ian Dunstan kicked 7-3. So it's just amazing. Phenomenal record score. It no longer is a record score, but at that time it was. So it was fantastic, and Kelvin was given the keys of the city of Footscray.
Bet he was. And Mocker kicking 7 barely gets a look in the paper.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, well, he was a very good player and a very good mate.
Yeah, absolutely. What a day to be a part of. And across your career, you played with some incredible players. You've named a bunch of them there, let alone the players you played with for Victoria. But we always ask our guests, if you could name your own Ross Abbey Mount Rushmore to carve 4 names into the side of a cliff, which 4 Bulldogs would you put up there as your greatest teammates of all time? I know this is a hard challenge because you played 11 seasons, played with some champions.
Yes, okay. Well, that's an interesting question. Certainly Gary Dempsey, Bernie Quinlan, Calvin Templeton. I think they're the standouts.
How was it sort of running alongside Dempsey? Describe him for those people who never got to watch him play.
Well, actually, Gary was just unbeatable. I'm sure the other coaches said, "Don't kick it to Dempsey." He'd just mark it all the time. He wouldn't worry about that. He was just a freak in terms of his ability to mark the ball and read the play. So, it was fantastic. So he was great. I guess that playing beside other players, I perhaps would relate more to backline players.
Right.
Like when we were playing well, Stephen Power was normally on the other halfback flank. We'd have Bernie Quinlan or Ian Salmon playing really well at centre halfback. Bernie might be playing forward at different parts of any one year. I didn't play a lot with Gordon Casey, but obviously he played a bit with him. But Terry Wheeler, for most of our careers, he was the guy behind me. And if you ever wanted someone behind you, Terry Wheeler's the person you want to have behind you. So he was great. And the fullbacks, that was Laurie Sandlands. Depends, he played full forward or fullback. But those guys, you sort of felt, we really played together well, I think. I think there are a lot of good players that you could put an argument for the 4th one. I should mention too that I played with Doug Hawkins for 4 seasons, and he was an emerging player and clearly had a lot of ability. But I guess at the end of his 4th season, he hadn't reached that standard that he would later play at for a long time. So, I did play with him and he became a superstar, but at that stage he was emerging. Yeah. So no, I wouldn't I wouldn't pick a 4th one, I don't think. Yeah.
All right, we're happy with the 3.
We'll keep one.
Keep one up your sleeve because those 3 are absolutely massive. And what an amazing thing to play with those lads.
Yeah.
So let's take us to 1979 now. 1979 and 80, they were quite lean years, weren't they? But
they were. 79 was a bit of a mixed year, personally. Didn't really. I had a bit of soft tissue injury and stuff like that, so didn't have the continuity of all the other years. The other 10 were, really had that continuity, so didn't contribute much. 1980. Royce Hart came in and decided that anyone he didn't think could play in the next Premiership, he would show them the door, or they would show them the door. So it meant that we started the season with about 22 players who'd represented the Bulldogs in senior games. That made things difficult. Now, they did pick up a few kids, but that they wouldn't even play seniors for a couple of years. Steve Wallace played a couple of years later, and Magic McLean, and so they got some good kids to start in the thirds. But no, it was a bit lean, and we'd lost a couple of the last games in 1979, and we lost the first 11 in 1980. So it was 13 or 14 losses on the trot. We played Fitzroy at the Junction Oval, and it was one of the best wins ever because it came together, and we played really well, and we broke the long drought. So that was one of the most pleasing games, and you sort of think, well, in a pretty ordinary year, you shouldn't have pleasing games, but that was one that was good. Yeah.
Love that. Love it. Love it. So let's move to your final year, 1981. The last hurrah. The players tell us the end of the road sometimes just creeps up on you. Was that how it was for you? How did you make the decision to hang up the boots?
Yeah, okay. Well, 1980 had gone pretty well. I played 16 of the games. The first 10 years I was just dedicated to footy, and even though I was at uni and doing commerce and then chartered accounting, and you just start early in the morning and get to training at Western Oval, and you wouldn't worry about all those things. But it got to the point where I wasn't able to give it everything. Other things were changing, and I played the first half of the year, and then and the other thing too is I think that if we'd been contending, I would have been there. But we weren't contending at all. We were right in the bottom. But if we'd had a sniff of the finals, well, yeah, I would have kept going. Yeah, but look, I really wrapped with what unfolded over those times. I could have ended up as no game player, but an 8-game player. That was really on the cards, and so I'm really thankful to the opportunity that I got from the footy club. I really felt that I was representing the people of the western suburbs, as well as my school and my local club Strathmore and my family. I really felt that all the way through. So I was really pleased to have done, as well as I did. And I think, everyone's got when they leave, most people sort of find it a bit hard to adjust. And I think we were lucky because we had full-time jobs, and we had friends outside footy. But notwithstanding that, I think it took a good 3 years before I sort of adjusted to life after footy. Yeah.
So you've become the president of the Past Players Association. What an amazing honour to have. How is that role for you, and what does it involve?
Well, our objective is to get past players to reconnect with their mates and the club, but principally their mates. We spend a good deal of time with each other in the best years of our lives, if you like, in some would say, and to try and draw people back is a challenge. Yeah, I guess a lot of people would say you just put out an invitation, that all flock in. That's not the way it works. With most people, they retire before they think they should, or leave the club before they think they should. And that is so whether you're Joe Bloggs or you're one of the superstars, one of the best players that ever played. And if we use Michael Tuck as an example, he was dirty because he still had another couple of years before he was 50, so he could have played again. So, and we've got, countless examples of that. So it takes a while. So, and also the exit, the exits are generally not ideal, but I don't know if you could have an ideal exit anyway, but, it's sort of, it's been great. And we'll love you to come along anytime you like. And as you leave, you just want to close the door, please. So it's sort of, So for 95%, if not more, they have had an exit which they would, they believed they should have gone longer, and people didn't treat them the way they would have liked. Yeah. So it's a matter of talking to them and saying, well, look, it's more about your mates. It's not about so-and-so who was there then, and but it's more your mates. So it's all about bringing them together. It's been really, really nice to be able to be mates with them, as well as the guys that I went through with. Peter Welch I see most weeks. Ian Morrison went to my 21st. I went to his 21st.
Wow.
Bruce Reid, John Reid, Dennis Blair coming over for we catch up in Perth each year. Yeah.
Amazing. And Dougie says that, it's all about the mateship at the end of the day. And Neil Cordy described you as the best at the business at being able to bring people together. And so it must just fill you with pride to see that camaraderie and that, those bonds so strong.
Yeah, it is. It does give you a buzz. And when you sort of talk to someone like Michael Egan, who is a great player and a teammate, and who left in pretty ordinary circumstances, but didn't, that's fair enough. But there's a time to come back, and mix with your Michael McKenna's and Matt Johnson and Neil Cordy and guys that he really got on well with, and he was a very popular fella. So he's after 10 years of pestering him, he's been involved with a bunch of things that we've done recently. So that's really nice.
He's back. Yeah. That's awesome to hear. I love it. It's Bulldog heaven.
And for me, I guess, as the person who was a teetotaler, who was the driver when everyone was celebrating on a Saturday night, it's given me a chance to really get to know some of the people that were good blokes, but who I didn't get to know as much as I might have if I'd joined in. But if I'd joined in, I wouldn't have been able to do what I didn't think I'd be able to do what I did do. So,
love to hear that. Love it, Ross. We're coming close to the end of the podcast, and we without a word of a warning, we always put our guests into the hot seat. And part of that is we've got a 60-second Bulldog quiz for you. You've got 60 seconds on the clock. I'm going to give you 2 categories, Ross, and see how you go. So category 1, you can choose. It's player surnames beginning with W, or you can have Dougie Hawkins as your themed. So which one would you like?
The W's.
W's. All right, fantastic. 60 seconds on the clock. Good luck. Your time will start after the first question. Cody Whitten is the nephew of Tigers legend Dale. Is that true or false?
False.
Correct. Nicky Winmar wore the number 1 Guernsey in 1999. Is that true or false?
False.
That was true. Teddy Whitten Jr. and Senior played the most combined father-son games for the club. Is that true or false?
True.
That was the Libbers. Stuart Wigney and Steve Wallace both came from which Gippsland club?
Leongatha.
Correct. Easton Wood changed his number 10 from which Guernsey number?
I don't know.
29. Which W has won the most club best and fairest?
Peter Welsh.
Oh, it was Scotty West. Ray Who won the 1963 best and fairest? Ray
Walker.
Correct. Which player had the nickname Cement Head before being traded to the Giants?
Callum Boyd.
Correct. Which former player took over from coach after the failed merger in 1990?
Yeah.
I'll let you have a go at that. So it's 1990. Which W took over as coach?
It was Wales, wasn't it?
You got it. Nailed it.
I don't think Daniel Cross has got much to worry about.
Look, you did incredibly well, Ross. Let's put the scores up on the board. Here come the scores right now, Ross. Oh, you've done incredibly well. Not quite up the top, but beautiful job.
All right.
Well done, mate.
Thanks very much, Matt.
Love it, love it. We're going to end our podcast with our final question, Ross, and we want to ask, how would you like to be remembered by Bulldog supporters? And do you have any final messages for people who've loved you and loved your journey?
Oh, I think I'd like to be remembered as someone who always gave their best, was determined, reliable, consistent. Those are the sort of traits that you'd like to. And as far as the Bulldogs are concerned, well, I guess just to support them, whether they're up or down, and just to, as the Bulldogs supporters have always done to do that sort of thing rather than just when they're winning. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We can lose that message sometimes as supporters, can't we? But it's that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and everyone's doing their best. And you listen in the crowd, and sometimes that's questioned, but they're all trying really hard. And so, yeah, good luck to them. It's great to see the young fellas.
Wise words indeed. Well, on behalf of all our supporters here at Inside the Kennel, we want to say a huge thank you, Ross, for joining us here today and telling us your story. They're going to drink it up, and we've absolutely loved having you on.
All right. Thanks very much, Matt. Good on you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ross Abbey.
Red in my heart, white in my veins, blue in what I read, white and blue in my brain. I'm Bulldog born, Bulldog, that's my breed. I was born to follow where the Bulldogs lead. Let's start.